America is entering a recession, and the truth is, some states will break first. Not because of panic, but because they were already weak. The housing market today does not lack homes. It lacks people who still have enough money to buy and hold them. The moment homes stop selling, those who bought at the peak will break before prices even have time to collapse. This video points out 11 states that will fall first when the recession hits real estate head-on. If you live in or own property in one of them, this is not for entertainment. This is so you know whether you are standing on solid ground or on a crack. Let's begin. 1. California. The American dream is cracking. California was once the place where Americans believed that if you worked hard, you would have a home, a future, and a better life for your children. But today, California has everything except affordability. The median home price has surpassed $800,000. To buy an average home, you need an annual income of around $230,000, while the median household income is only about $90,000. That gap is no longer a difference, it is a rupture. When home prices far outpace income, real estate is no longer a wealth-building asset. It becomes a long-term financial burden, and that very burden is pushing people out of this state. In just 1 year, nearly 250,000 people left California. Not because they hate it, but because they can no longer afford to live here. Those who stay are forced to carry high taxes, high living costs, increasingly expensive home insurance, and a job market that is no longer as stable as before. In San Francisco and Los Angeles, large numbers of office buildings sit empty. Commercial property values are plunging, and this is pulling the risk of cascading defaults through the credit system. At the same time, the state budget is facing deficits of tens of billions of dollars. As tax revenue from the wealthy, businesses, and the stock market declines sharply, California no longer has the room to maneuver that it had in previous years. And this is the most dangerous point. California does not need to collapse as an entire state. It only needs the market to lose liquidity. It only needs homes to stop selling, even after price cuts. It only needs buyers to disappear for a few quarters. And that alone is enough to break the back of an entire middle class. Those who bought homes at peak prices, the families who borrowed to the limit believing that prices always go up, will be hit first. California is still beautiful, still full of opportunity, but the American dream here is no longer meant for the majority. Many people bought homes during 2021-2022 with stable incomes, and after just 1 year of recession, they realized the problem was not falling prices, but the fact that there was no one left to buy them out so they could escape. If you are living in, owning property in, or preparing to retire in California, the most dangerous thing right now is not panic, but believing that you are immune. California does not collapse in a single day. It makes you poorer, 1 month at a time. 2. Louisiana. Recession. Combined with natural disasters. Louisiana is not a state that collapses because home prices were overinflated. It collapses because it has never been given a break between crises. While other places still have time to recover after a recession, Louisiana is already forcing itself to absorb another blow, and then another. This state's economy depends heavily on oil and gas. When that industry slows, state revenue drops almost immediately. Jobs disappear faster than local communities can adapt. In Louisiana, losing a job is not just a loss of personal income. It shakes entire small towns that survive on only a few fixed sources of employment. But what makes Louisiana more fragile than most other states is not just the economy, but natural disasters. Hurricanes are no longer rare risks. They have become a repeating cycle. People barely finish repairing their roofs after one storm when the next one arrives. Each time, insurance costs rise. The cost of holding a home increases, while income does not rise with it. In many other states, a recession causes home prices to fall first. In Louisiana, people break under rising costs before prices even have a chance to adjust. Home insurance keeps climbing, repair costs increase, taxes and living expenses do not fall. A house is no longer a wealth-building asset, but a fixed expense that cannot be cut. The problem is that Louisiana does not have a deep enough financial buffer to absorb this double blow. When storms hit, the state needs relief funds, but the budget was already weak before the recession. When the economy slows, the state is forced to cut services at the exact moment residents need support the most. The result is people trapped between lost income and costs they cannot reduce. Selling the house means taking a loss. Keeping it means they cannot carry it. One viewer commented, "My house didn't lose much value, but after the storm and losing my job, I no longer have the strength to hold on to it for another year." And that is why Louisiana does not break from a single shock. It breaks from repeated blows, hitting at the exact moment people no longer have any margin left to endure more. Louisiana does not collapse from one fatal strike. It collapses from being hit again and again, until there is no strength left to stand up one more time. If another storm comes just as your income stalls, how long can you still carry this house? 3. Florida, breaking from costs, not prices. Florida is not a state collapsing because home prices fall first. In fact, in many areas, prices have not even dropped significantly yet. Florida breaks in a different way, quieter and far more dangerous. It breaks under the cost of holding a home, especially since the 2021-2022 period. Many people in Florida were able to buy homes. They qualified for loans. They signed contracts. They believed the hardest part was over. But the real shock only began after they moved in. Home insurance rises year after year without asking permission. HOA fees increase through sudden reassessments. Condo fees jump after a single short notice letter. And most importantly, these costs never go down when the market slows. In Florida, the question is not whether you can buy a home. The question is whether you can hold on to that home. Many families discover that the purchase price is only the beginning, while the cost of keeping the home is what erodes them month after month. These are not flexible expenses. They are mandatory costs. You cannot negotiate with insurance companies. You cannot bargain with HOAs. And you cannot postpone condo association fees. Florida becomes especially fragile for one key reason. The state has a very high proportion of retirees. Their income is fixed. Pensions do not rise with insurance premiums. Social Security does not keep pace with HOA fees. When the cost of holding a home rises faster than income, options begin to disappear. Cutting expenses is not enough. Borrowing more makes no sense. And in the end, many people are forced to sell. Not because they want to, but because they have no other choice. When retirees are forced to sell, Florida's market turns very quickly. Not because of speculative panic, but because these sellers do not have time to wait. They need liquidity. And when supply comes from people who are forced to exit, prices do not need to crash to change the direction of the market. Florida does not collapse loudly. It does not create an immediate sense of crisis, but it exhausts people slowly. Each year, another fee. Each year, another notice of increase. Until the home once seen as a retirement dream becomes an uncontrollable burden. If the cost of holding your home keeps rising while your income stays flat, how much control do you really have over how long you can remain in Florida? 4. Illinois. Paying for the past. Illinois does not lack money for the future. Illinois lacks money because it is paying for the past. This is the fundamental difference that makes the state especially fragile when a recession arrives. Illinois' problem is not a sudden shock, but financial obligations that were locked in decades ago. Massive pension debt is the largest chain binding Illinois. This is not debt that can be renegotiated or postponed. It is a mandatory legal obligation that must be paid every year, regardless of whether the economy is good or bad. When a recession hits, other states can cut investments or delay plans. Illinois cannot. Much of the state's budget is already decided before the fiscal year even begins. The result is that newly collected money is not used to build the future, but to patch the holes of the past. Residents pay higher taxes, but see no improvement in services. Businesses pay more, but receive no long-term stability in return. This is the point where Illinois loses trust, not just money. Illinois' population has been declining for many years. People are not leaving because home prices are too high. In fact, housing in Illinois remains relatively affordable compared to many other states. The problem is that very few people want to stay and carry a system they know will not become lighter in the future. When young people leave, businesses follow. No one wants to place a 10 or 20-year bet on a place that must always pay old debts before thinking about new growth. Illinois does not collapse because someone made a mistake in a single year. It collapses because too many generations are paying the price for decisions made in the past. If you buy a home and build your future here, are you ready to carry obligations you did not create for the next 10 or 20 years? 5. New Jersey. Taxes that consume retirement income. New Jersey does not collapse because home prices crash or because jobs disappear overnight. This state collapses in a far quieter and more brutal way. Taxes erode life after you stop working. For retirees, this is not a distant scenario. It is pressure that builds year after year, even when everything still looks fine on the surface. New Jersey has the highest property taxes in the United States, averaging over 2% of a home's value each year. In many areas, that means $8,000 to $12,000 in annual taxes for an average house. But for retirees, this is not a statistic. It is a very real reality. 2 months of retirement income disappear every year, just to keep the right to remain in their own home. What makes this dangerous is that these taxes do not go down when the market slows. Home values may stagnate or even dip slightly, but taxes and local costs continue to rise. A home that was once the reward of a lifetime of work becomes a mandatory expense that must be fed every year, even when you are no longer generating new income. When recession hits, New Jersey is boxed in. The state has no real room left to raise taxes further. Residents are already at their limit. Businesses are exhausted. The remaining choices are to cut public services or take on more debt to buy time. Both options degrade quality of life, especially for older residents who depend most on local services. This creates a very dangerous spiral. High taxes push retirees to leave. When they leave, the state's most stable source of revenue weakens. To compensate, the burden shifts onto those who remain, tightening the spiral even further. New Jersey's housing market does not need a bubble to burst. It only needs people to no longer be able to hold on to their homes. New Jersey does not make people poor overnight. It slowly strips away their freedom of choice after retirement. If 2 months of your retirement income disappear every year just because of taxes, how long do you truly control the decision to stay in New Jersey? 6. Connecticut, a wealthy state. But rigid Connecticut is one of the wealthiest states in the United States when measured by average income and standard of living. But that very wealth hides a highly dangerous weakness. Connecticut is like a Swiss watch, precisely designed, finely engineered, expensive to maintain, and extremely difficult to fix when something goes wrong. Connecticut's economy is not broad or diversified. It relies heavily on finance, asset management, and a small group of very high-income earners. When financial markets are stable, this machine runs smoothly. But when Wall Street wobbles, the state's revenue dries up very quickly because a large share of its tax income comes from a very narrow segment of the population. At the same time, Connecticut's fixed costs are exceptionally high. High taxes, generous benefits, a public service system built for a long period of sustained prosperity. The problem is that these expenses cannot be reduced quickly when the economy turns downward. Unlike more flexible states, Connecticut has very few adjustment levers. The gears are already locked in place. When financial markets fluctuate, wealthy residents begin to leave. There is no need for mass migration. Even a small percentage relocating to Florida or Texas is enough to create a serious budget shock. And when revenue from high-income earners disappears, the gap left behind is extremely difficult to fill with taxes from a middle class that is already heavily burdened. The result is that Connecticut enters a dangerous position. Revenue is no longer reliable, and spending cannot be reduced. To survive, the state is forced to raise taxes or cut services. But higher taxes accelerate the outflow, while weaker services reduce quality of life, especially for older residents. Connecticut's housing market therefore does not collapse like a bubble. It stalls because there are no longer enough people willing to pay high prices to sustain the old system. Homes are still beautiful. Neighborhoods are still quiet. But liquidity weakens because buyers understand that the long-term costs here no longer match the stability they receive. Connecticut does not collapse because it is poor, nor because it made short-term mistakes. It collapses because it was designed too perfectly for a stable world, and that world has changed. When this machine begins to jam its gears, are you sure you want to stay inside it for much longer? 7. Maryland, living off the federal government. Maryland looks very strong. Stable income, steady jobs. Residential areas around Washington, D.C. are always busy. But that strength exists only as long as the federal government remains strong and continues spending steadily. Maryland does not live off the free market. Maryland lives off federal budgets, contracts, and federal paychecks. But in Maryland, all it takes is a shutdown, a budget delay, or contract cuts for income to disappear immediately. There is no lag, no preparation period. Paychecks stop, but mortgages, taxes, and insurance wait for no one. A political decision in Washington, D.C. can shake an entire neighborhood in Maryland within days. I've lived in Maryland for over 20 years and always believed federal jobs were absolutely safe. When the government shut down, my family's income stopped immediately, but the mortgage payments didn't wait. This is exactly what makes Maryland real estate more fragile than it appears. Homes bought on the assumption of stable income become the most vulnerable the moment that stability disappears. These buyers were not speculators. They did not borrow recklessly, but they placed their entire financial decision on a cash flow they do not actually control. Maryland's housing market, therefore, does not depend purely on natural supply and demand. It depends on policy, budgets, and decisions that local residents have no direct voting power over. When income is disrupted, people do not sell because they want to. They sell because they are forced to. And when forced sellers appear, the market shifts direction very quickly. Maryland does not collapse because its economy is weak. It collapses because the stability people trusted turns out to depend on a switch located somewhere else. When that switch is turned off, every assumption of safety falls apart at the same time. If your income depends on a decision you cannot control, are you truly living in a safe housing market? 8. Wyoming. When coal and oil stop flowing, Wyoming looks peaceful, vast, and quiet. But that calm hides a very fragile truth. The state's economy stands on only one leg, and that leg is energy. Coal, oil, and natural gas do not just create jobs. They fund the budget, schools, and entire local communities. When coal declines and oil slows, the shock comes fast. Jobs do not disappear quarter by quarter, but wave by wave. In Wyoming, losing one mine is not just losing a few hundred jobs. It means losing the grocery store, the diner, the school, and the reason people stay. Here, people do not sell their homes because of losses. They sell because there is no longer a reason to remain. The key difference with Wyoming is that there is no such thing as a slow recovery housing market. In larger states, prices can fall and then stagnate for years. In Wyoming, things are much clearer. Either people are there or no one is. When jobs leave, housing demand disappears almost immediately. Homes do not sit unsold because prices are too high, but because there are no buyers left. This gives Wyoming real estate a very particular risk. When energy flows, housing looks cheap and attractive. But when that flow stops, liquidity evaporates. There is no large enough incoming population to replace what is lost. And when communities lose people, the housing market does not adjust, it simply shuts off. Wyoming does not collapse loudly, it slowly empties out, until only houses remain that no one needs anymore. 9. Rhode Island, small state. Big fall. Rhode Island has one fatal weakness. It is too small to absorb shocks. When the economy is good, its small size allows it to run efficiently. But when recession arrives, that same smallness becomes an unavoidable burden. Rhode Island's economy relies heavily on tourism, restaurants, and services. All it takes is one slower than normal summer, tourist streets thinning out in mid-July, and the state's cash flow dries up very quickly. There is no major industry strong enough to compensate. There is no safety lag. During hot market periods, home prices in Rhode Island rose very quickly. Limited supply and a small space pushed prices up faster than the underlying economic strength. But when confidence breaks, the opposite happens. Buyers disappear, sellers appear at the same time, and because the market is so small, prices fall faster than almost anywhere else. Unlike large states, Rhode Island has no ability to spread the shock. A small shift in sentiment is enough to flip the market. Housing here does not collapse because of complex financial bubbles, but because confidence disappears within a space that is simply too small. Rhode Island does not need a major crisis to break. One worse than expected season is enough to throw everything off balance. 10. Washington, the tech. Dream is cracking. Washington was once a symbol of high incomes, stable tech jobs, and home prices that rose without question. But those very factors are now turning inward and squeezing the state. When high income disappears, high costs do not disappear with it, and that is when the system begins to crack. Tens of thousands of tech engineers have been laid off in prolonged waves of cuts. Amazon, Microsoft, and tech startups that once formed the backbone of the economy are now tightening aggressively. Families who bought homes at peak prices under the assumption that tech salaries never go away are now facing two blows at once: falling income and high interest rates. Either one alone is dangerous. When both arrive together, there is no retreat. In Seattle, Bellevue, and Redmond, homes no longer sell quickly as they once did. Listing times stretch longer, buyers become cautious, and when liquidity slows, those who bought at the peak are hit first. Not because they speculated recklessly, but because they placed too much trust in the stability of their industry. Washington has another quiet weakness: no state income tax, meaning the budget depends heavily on consumption and economic activity. When tech slows, spending falls, and state revenue shrinks very quickly. The tech dream does not collapse loudly, but it is cracking from within, right in the places once considered the safest. 11. Oregon, a green paradise that cannot sustain its budget. Oregon sounds pleasant. No sales tax, green environment, a slower lifestyle. But that model only works when the economy is still flowing. When recession arrives, those very advantages become fatal weaknesses. Oregon relies heavily on personal income tax. When people lose jobs or incomes decline, state revenue evaporates within just a few quarters. There is no sales tax to compensate. There is no thick enough buffer to withstand a prolonged downturn. The budget reacts more slowly than real life is deteriorating. Portland was once a destination for young, creative, tech-driven populations. But as jobs weakened, living costs stayed high, and urban order declined, an outflow began. More homes sit empty. Offices lose tenants. The sense of livability disappears faster than home prices fall. Oregon real estate therefore does not break because of speculative bubbles, but because the economy no longer has the strength to keep people staying. When people leave, homes lose their purpose before they lose value. And a market where homes no longer have a reason to be bought will, sooner or later, break on its own. The 11 states you just saw do not collapse because of panic. They break because their structures cannot withstand recession. Income slows down, costs do not fall. Homes stop selling, and owners lose their exit before prices even have time to collapse. This time, the market does not give you time to adapt. Those who wait will be trapped. Those who believe everything will return to the way it was will pay the price. Doing nothing is also a decision, and it is often the most expensive decision in a recession. If the state you live in is on this list, the question is no longer, is everything okay? But how much margin you have left before liquidity disappears completely.